If we want to protect cultural property, we must involve law enforcement. Sadly, my experience until now is that cultural property protection is not the sexiest argument that you bring up, especially with the military. And then if you look at the law enforcement side, even less so. I came here and accepted a kind invitation for three purposes. Number one, I'm asking you for your help to improve the products that my institution, the unit for which I'm working, is developing, also on cultural property protection. The second one is explaining a little bit what NATO stability policing can do to contribute to protect cultural property. And the third one, allow me give you some homework. I'm a chief warrant officer in the Italian Carabinieri, but I'm not representing the Carabinieri, I'm here privately today. The Carabinieri are a military force that is mostly tasked with policing duties. So we are in between those different environments. So for us, the contact to the population, the community, is absolutely paramount. And that includes also cultural property protection. This is me, 2003, in Iraq, one of the many missions that I participated in. And I was lucky enough that my government sent me abroad to different missions and gained a lot of experience. And now I'm working for NATO Stability Policing Center of Excellence. And in my presentation, I'm going to tell you what a Center of Excellence is. We have heard that before today, how they basically are formed. Why? Because you can contribute to those centers with your expertise. And I will ask you to actually do so. Second one, I will tell you what stability policing is in NATO, and then what stability policing can do in cultural property protection. Centers of Excellence. Years ago, NATO realized that there was no way for all the nation to be involved in research and development in all the remit. There's just too much. So they came up with Smart Defense and Center of Excellence. How do they work? Let's look at the example of my center. One nation, in this case Italy, approaches Allied Command Transformation in NATO and tells them, we know that you have centers of excellence. We are expert in policing abroad and in teaching others, in training others to do policing. Is NATO interested? First thing ACT does, is anybody else already looking at this topic? They don't want overlappings. Nobody is actually taking care of that. Italy, are you sure that you want to do that? Yes, Italy says, we are sure. We're going to put the infrastructure at no cost to NATO. We're going to dedicate funding, no cost to NATO. And we are going to put experts and personnel in, no cost to NATO. So it's a heavy investment on these framework nations. There is an accreditation process. And at the end of this one, the center can start to work. We have a so-called steering committee, one national representative for each nation that participates. And they decide what we are going to do in the next year and how much money that each nation is actually contributing to our program of work. Very important and key, we are not part of NATO. We are just accredited. NATO is our major client. This is how we are structured. Normally there is a directorate, there are branches, the people who are actually doing the work. And the only thing that you should look at is the gray boxes. That's paid by NATO as a framework nation. All the blue part is multinational and it's shared cost. So we are a hub of expertise. We are looking at innovating and transforming NATO in our field, which is stability policing. What do? We develop and review concept and doctrine. We elaborate training curricula and develop training and deliver those trainings. And we work the lessons learned cycle. You see the flags of the 9 nations that are participating in my center. What is stability policing? Stability policing is, first of all, a concept. Wherever NATO goes, the local population and the host nation, the government, have police problems and justice problems. Now, who should give an answer to those requests? Well, firstly, it is their police. Well, there might be some problems. Bosnia, you had police forces who were ethnically biased. Kosovo, there was no police. Yugoslavia had pulled all the police forces out of that part. There is other actors that might intervene, for example, the United Nations. But again, There might be problems. They could be stopped by a veto. We might need a long time to deploy and deploy forces that are not very robust. Other actors are very quick in deploying and they are super robust, but they don't have that expertise, that experience, that sensitivity to operate as law enforcement officials. So we have a gap between what is needed, host nation and populace, and the providers. And stability policing bridges that gap. That is exactly what we do. We come in to solve that problem. I was part of the first deployment of the multinational specialized unit to Bosnia in 1998, the first such kind of deployment for NATO. I worked with a unit that was then deployed to Kosovo in 1999, and I was part of deployment to Iraq, which was not a NATO mission. Stability policing is done by the major international organizations with different names, terminologies, concepts, perspectives. It took NATO only 18 years to come up with a publication that told us what stability policing for NATO means. And it gives us a definition. So, police-related activities that are intended to reinforce or temporarily replace the indigenous police. To do what? To contribute to restore and uphold public order, public security, rule of law, and to protect human rights. That means we have two main missions. One is the replacement mission, temporarily. There is no police. They are not able to take care of the problem. Also to protect cultural property. In that case, NATO is taking over completely all those tasks. We are protecting the museum. We are investigating people who are looting. Let me give an example on the reinforcement, which is a better strengthening. Police capacity building is probably better. As a monitor, I deploy to a nation, I observe, and I report. Is the police, during its patrols, passing through the museum? Are they going to the desert to see if the archaeological excavations are being looted? And then I report back to the authorities. If I bring it into a little bit more activity, as a mentor, I will approach that police commander and tell him, hey, your police officers are not doing this. Maybe introduce this sort of targets for the criminals in your patrols. As an advisor, even higher level, I go to even ministers. Ma'am, sir, you do not have a unit that is specialized on investigating crimes that attack cultural property. You do not have the proper legal provisions in your penal code. Can we help you to actually develop those? How do we do that? Well, very easy. In reforming, that when we bring in our expertise, we look at, okay, what is the situation? How can we improve the structures that you have? We don't have the personnel. How are we going to do that? No problem. We can train. We can train the trainers if it is a lower level, or actually in more direct mobile training teams, or even out of the nation trainings to create that human resources. And in partnering, we deploy together with our colleagues in the host nation to actually do the job. On the job training, very important for policing. Who are the actors for stability policing? Very important for us, very key for us. SP is an open club. Anybody can participate. The first one I would mention is gendarmeries, like myself, military background, but specialized in policing. That's just perfect to conduct these sort of activities. Next one, the military police. Also military background, maybe more of that, but they have some policing, absolutely, bring them in. Other combat forces, other military forces, why would they not use an infantry squad to actually guard an archaeological site? And if the environment is permissive, even non-military actors, so civilian experts and whatnot. All can participate, but obviously not all can do everything. Do we really think that a captain and the paratroopers can investigate Daesh, who is selling permits to do illegal excavations, gets those pieces, gets them across nations, maybe creates false provenance, sells them in the international market, reinvests, launders that money, and use it to buy explosives and weapons? Absolutely not. You need people who are dedicated, who have the experience to do that. What is the role of stability policing? Well, we have heard about the geopolitical situation, new threats. Definitely hybrid threats, the use of cyber tools to attack cultural property, which exist also in cyberspace. The use of law to conduct warfare, the so-called lawfare. Some actors have really dedicated some time to studying this. Other actors have been very successful, like Daesh, in using social media to disseminate and spread their terror. Definitely we can say that the threat has changed. And again, I think that most of you know the pictures here. The threat has changed also against cultural property. Cultural property is used, it's exploited because it attracts media attention, because it attracts the larger public and spreads this narrative of those actors. So, what can stability policing do? Well, absolutely, the first thing always available, reinforcement activities. You beef up that capability, those capacity in the host nation, in the ministries, and especially, obviously, in the police force, in law enforcement, justice sector, corrections also, and the judiciary, why not? Second task is replacement activities. We conduct executive policing in the nation. We investigate those crimes. We use the term, well, actually later we don't use the term lawfare. Lawfare is what the enemy does. We conduct legal operations. And what are those legal operations? Well, we are enforcing, especially as police officers, we are enforcing international and the applicable law of the host nation to create effects. We call it legal targeting. The term targeting has been mentioned before. Obviously, we as operators in the legal environment, we create legal effects. Legal targeting, I came up with a definition to enforce this internationally applicable host nation law to create effects on adversaries and on enemies. We can therefore say that stability policing is fighting adversaries, enemies, with policing means. At the same time, we are protecting cultural property with those policing means. Look at some examples. Crowd and riot control. Put police officer in front of the museum so it does not get hit by riots, or it does not get looted. Border control. We want to see who comes into this nation and who goes out, and especially what goes out. Those coins in that pocket, are they current currency or are they 2,000 years old and financing Daesh? If we want to be able to arrest these irregular actors, these terrorists, these criminals, we cannot send in unarmed police officers. We need strong resources, robust policing, also for those high-risk arrests. Protecting people and property. What are those people? It could be the director of the museum, for example. The property, a church or a mosque. Somebody will say, wait, Stefano, wait a second, but these are not police vehicles. This is Italian infantry. Yes, because as we said, the military can also contribute to stability policing if they're doing what they're doing in the replacement of the local police. Critical site security, and in this picture I'm actually cheating because this is the Louvre, so that is not technical stability policing. But we can actually protect those sites, those museums. At the same time, we are asking colleagues, experts, to improve the capacity of the locals in training them, in providing those reinforcement activities. Why? Because at the end of the day, we want them as quick as possible to be able to take care of the problem, to take that responsibility off our shoulders, also because we want to save taxpayer money. What are the most important tasks for stability policing in protecting cultural property? Criminal investigations and police intelligence. Well, actually, we now like to call it law enforcement intelligence because it's a little wider. We want to know who does what, where, when, and how, so we can fight them. Just very briefly look at the criminal chain. You normally have a lot of actors, a large number of people who are looting, who are stealing cultural property, wherever that is happening. I don't know of a single nation in the world that actually does not have crimes that are attacking cultural property. Then there is some middle persons organized crime, terrorists, who are actually moving those pieces. And then we have the receiving end, sometimes private people, private institutions, even museums. They speak of source country, transit country, and then market country or destination country. Very often, these three do not coincide. So if I ask you, where does it make sense to intervene? Which is if I have to choose only one group because I have limited resources that I want to investigate, I want to focus on which group should I focus? Very simple, the middle people. Why? Well, we can achieve a very small effect if we stop the farmer that is a subsistence looter, that picks up the one coin he finds, gets $10 for it, and feeds the family. But how much have we accomplished? At the other end of the spectrum, the people who are buying this stuff, even online, most of the time they don't even know that this thing has an illegal origin. And again, we are talking very large numbers. But the people in the middle, they're fewer, and for sure they're criminals. So this is where we want to focus to achieve the most effect. What other tasks can we conduct? Surveillance, even using technology. We want to conduct search and seize operations. These are my drivers in Iraq in 2003, in one apartment where they find some pieces. This is again Iraq, 2003, out in the open, some of the tools that were secured at the time. I always stress, particularly to the military that attends our courses, you normally look for explosive, for weapons and intelligence. Also look for possible drugs, large amounts of money, and cultural property. Criminals are diversifying their enterprises to finance themselves. We need to also be able to stop them with just the same sort of diversity. If we manage our crime scenes properly, and that sometimes might be needed for the military to do it because the situation requires it, there's nobody else available. If we're able to secure that crime scene, then we can conduct proper forensic activities, getting more information about how the crime was committed. We can use automated systems to gather the information about the identity of the people who are committing these crimes. At the end of the day, what we want to be able to do is arresting them, taking them out of circulation. Why? Because we want to counter terrorism, the smuggling, and organized crime. In doing this, we are helping out in war crime investigations, and we are assisting to international courts. Patrolling the internet is not yet a task for stability policing, at least it's not mentioned in our publication, but we are reviewing the publication and it will get in as cybercrime and cyberterrorism investigations. Why? Because the internet is being used as a tool to move cultural property, to move cryptocurrencies. We'll leave the questions for later, and I will go directly to the takeaways. Stability policing cultural property protection brings police activities within the military campaign. It is about police capacity building, so reinforcing the local police and the host nation. It is about policing, executive policing, legal targeting, conducting investigations. And the information that we gather, this intelligence that we develop, is available for the whole force. We want to defeat enemies and adversaries in using policing means. We want to protect cultural property in using those policing means. And I will conclude with my homework for you. Please, in whatever capacity you are active, go and contact your local law enforcement. Invite them to your institution. Show them what you have so they can actually give you some suggestions on how to better interact. You need that personal connection before the crisis erupts. And maybe do the same also for the military. Why not? Sometimes in big disasters, they're the first ones that come to help you. The second thing is get your inventories. Many institutions don't even know what they're responsible for. Get your priorities. Update the databases. If we don't know what you're responsible for, it's going to be very difficult to prove that that piece that is recovered by the police, sometimes 20 years later in a different continent, was actually yours. Thank you very much.